many developments taking place right ahead of NSA level talks between India and Pakistan. We still don't know what both countries' stand is on that or whether or not the talks will go ahead. But the latest that is coming in, sources have confirmed Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has said Islamabad will not abandon Kashmir issue in talks. Sharif has said Pakistan will raise Indian forces violation of LOC on the international forum. Well, that's the latest coming in from the crisis meeting which is taking place in Islamabad, chaired by Nawaz Sharif himself. All right, the government, in fact, on the other hand, may detain separatists once again. The police have deployed, police security has been deployed outside the residence of separatist Said Ali Shah Gilani, Shabir Shah, Mirwais Omar Farooq. India further has hardened its stand. The government says Sartaj Aziz meeting Hurriyat leaders before or even after the talk is irrelevant and it does not approve of any Aziz Hurriyat Meet. The message has been conveyed to both Pakistan and Hurriyat. Options of rearresting and preventive detention of Hurriyat leaders open. Earlier, high-level sources told India Today that Hurriyat leaders may be allowed to meet Aziz after NSA-level talks, but now that also off the table.
कल हम दिल्ली जा रहे हैं, परसों हमारी मीटिंग है रिसेप्शन में, तो हमारा जो स्टैंड बड़ा क्लियर है, कोई वेग नहीं है। हम चाहते हैं कि कश्मीर को राइट ऑफ सेल्फ डिटर्मिनेशन दिया जाए और पाकिस्तान का जो ऑफिशियल स्टैंड है वीज़ा वीज़ कश्मीर, तो उनकी जो पॉलिटिकल सपोर्ट और डिप्लोमेटिक सपोर्ट और मॉरल सपोर्ट हैं, और हम चाहेंगे कि पाकिस्तान इस मसले को, क्योंकि कश्मीर इज़ ए कोर इशू, अगर कल बातचीत इनकी होनी है तो कश्मीर मसले को उठाना चाहिए। जहाँ प्राइम मिनिस्टर आए, प्रेसिडेंट आए, तो हमने मुलाकातें की, कश्मीर के ऊपर बात की। आज ये तनाव बढ़ा दिया गया, नहीं मिलना नहीं चाहिए, किसी भी सूरत में इनको मिलने नहीं देना चाहिए, तो इससे हमारे हौसले कम पस्त नहीं होते हैं।
All right, so to get further perspective on the developments that are taking place less than 48 hours before NSA level talk, clearly it's gone down to the wire. We don't quite know if the talks are going to be held and under what atmospherics will these talks be held. We are joined right now, Shivshankar Mukherjee, former diplomat, as well as Rajiv Dogra, former Indian Consul General to Karachi. Both of them are with us live. But before I go to our guests, I'd like to cut across to Smita Sharma, our deputy editor, for the latest updates coming in. Smita, two things that we're looking at right now. That statement, official statement by Pakistan, which is going to come at the back of that crisis meet, which is about to end any time right now. That's what our colleague Kaskar tells us. On the other hand, with the kind of, reactions coming in from Pakistan, the latest is of Pakistan going back on the UFA agreement, now saying that they want to talk about Kashmir, they want broad-based talks.
By 4 o'clock, in another 2 hours or so at best, the situation will be clear now with a final word coming in. But for Pakistan right now, it's about addressing their domestic constituency.
Okay.
It's about addressing, the hardliners there or the army as well as the
All right, Smita, I'm afraid I'm going to come in, and the reason why is because we're having massive audio problem with your line. Would you ask your camera person to maybe re-establish that audio connect, and we'd like to go back to you. But let's cut across to our guest, Shivshankar Mukherjee, former diplomat, is joining us. Mr. Mukherjee, what do you reckon? Should we have expected this, Pakistan going back on the UFA pact?
Well, I for one am absolutely certain that no one who is at all informed about the state of play between India and Pakistan ever expected any real forward movement from these talks. Neither Pakistan nor India lives cocooned from the rest of the world, and there is such a thing as world opinion. Part of the compulsion, therefore, towards talks is really to be able to present a reasonable picture to the world that we are interested in peace and we are doing everything possible for it and not against dialogue. I mean, it's almost a mantra for the whole world to say that the only way forward is dialogue. And therefore, it behoves us and certainly Pakistan to bring up the subject of talks once in a while. As far as UFA is concerned, I think it is rather naive to expect that regardless of the paragraphs in that agreement on which Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has signed on the dotted line, that they would not use it for the purpose that they've used all the preceding talks that have taken place, which is to extract the maximum propaganda value out of it. They've never given an inch in terms of in terms of terrorism, their support for terrorism, their bringing to a real, genuine trial those against whom there is overwhelming evidence of terrorism, leave alone the question of the army being the owner, the one that nurtures and creates terrorism against India. So at the present moment, regardless of that meeting that you just reported, the crisis meeting of Nawaz Sharif, the real meeting is really going to be whatever meeting the army chief says. The point is now, I think, with this messy run-up to these talks, I think neither side wants the onus of calling it off. I think we'd be perfectly happy if the Pakistanis called off the talks, as long as we don't fall into the trap of calling off the talks ourselves, because that is precisely what Pakistan wants us to do and what it has been trying to make us to do.
Well, you're right, Mr. Mukherjee, because I'd like to bring in Mr. Dogra, Rajiv Dogra here. Sir, with what Mr. Mukherjee was saying now, it's clearly come down to who blinks first, because in, the backdrop of the global perception, it does seem that if the talks do go ahead, both Pakistan and India would be dragged to talks kicking and screaming. Neither one of them actually want to sit across the table and talk.
Well, you are absolutely right. In fact, 2 days after the UFA meeting, Sartaj Aziz held a press conference in Islamabad, and there he said bluntly, without mincing any words, that it was India who was forced by external powers to ask for the UFA meeting. And then he added that India will be forced by the same external powers to ask for another meeting. So you are absolutely right that the outside powers may have an interest and outside powers may put pressure. But my question is, why is the pressure put only on India, and why does India succumb to such pressure? So whether outside world is comfortable or uncomfortable with what we do, I think we should think in terms of our national interests. If a small country like Maldives can defy India and America and do exactly as it wants in terms of arresting the opposition leader who was earlier the president of the country, what prevents us from taking a strict action in the interests of the country if it means house arrest of a couple of people and ensuring that those people don't fly to New Delhi? So I think it's our weaknesses which we must prevent from being exposed to the outside, because every time we expose our weakness, the world takes advantage.
All right, with what you just said last, and we're going to ask our producers to connect us to Shuja ul Haq, because what we do know that over the last 1 hour we've seen massive, police deployment, developments there outside separatist houses. We're actually looking at possible imminent preventive detention of separatist leaders who've been invited to meet Sartaj Aziz in New Delhi. But Smita, before I go back to our guest, very quickly, what are the options right now that the Indian government is mulling?
Well, the Indian government is clearly waiting for that statement to come in. If Pakistan were to come ahead after this security meeting and say that, no, we will come to Delhi, but we will also talk about Kashmir. And not just that, talking to Kashmir in that delegation meeting, maybe, Indian government will listen into them. But if they say that, no, we'll still come ahead and meet with the Hurriyat, then Indian government will perhaps have to take that final call of calling off these talks. Either ways, whether it's Pakistan or India. But clearly, as Mr. Dogra was there pointing out, while it would be ideal, because there seems to have been completely that shift of position, at the end of the day, very leaders in the last NDA government, from the likes of L.K. Advani to Atal Bihari Vajpayee, were the ones who were not just interacting with Hurriyat leaders themselves, but also allowing every Pakistani leader who came in during that point of time, be it, of course, Parvez Musharraf himself, to have had those interactions with the Hurriyat. So if Narendra Modi has decided with his team of, the thinkers, tankers within the establishment, be it an Ajit Doval or an S. Shankar, that we don't want to allow Pakistan any meeting with Hurriyat, I just hope that he actually is able to stand up and justify this position when he goes to the United States, where he'll be crisscrossing right from the East Coast to the West Coast, just to come back and have a bilateral meeting with Barack Obama as well.
All right, what we're getting in right now, and I just want to tell our guests as well as Smita, we're getting in a word from Islamabad. My colleague Kasbar is on the phone line with us. The latest emanating of that crisis meet, which currently is still on. Now, it's been on over the last 2.5 hours, Kasbar, is what we know. Give us the latest updates. What's taking place right now? And when do we expect that formal statement?
Finally, Pakistan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has woken up, and just a couple of minutes back, I have just talked to spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, Mr. Qazi Khalilullah Khalil. He said Pakistan's formal reaction, Pakistan's official reaction regarding NXA talks is expected within a couple of hours. But according to my sources, who in fact prior to the meeting, the high-profile meeting, still being held, still going on in Islamabad's power corridor under the chairmanship of Pakistan Premier Nawaz Sharif, they have refused to accept Indian demand or the Indian dictate or the Indian conditions. So, at the moment, I'm still confused. We here in Pakistan, we are still confused that dust is not settled yet. So,
okay.
The fate of talks is not clear yet. So Pakistan has finally refused to accept.
So Mr. Mukherjee, stay with me, Kasbar, because we've got some guests with us. So let's, get a perspective from them, and I'm going to come right back to you. Mr. Mukherjee, if you can hear me, sir. It does seem now both sides digging their heels, both sides sticking to their condition, both sides now seeming wanting the other person to call off the talks.
Well, we needn't call it off. Let me give you the scenario. Let us assume that after this crisis meeting and whatever orders Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif receives from the army chief, a statement is issued that Pakistan is going to come to Delhi for the talks, but it will raise the Kashmir issue as part of the agenda, and it will insist on a meeting with the Hurriyat. Our response should be that our invitation to Pakistan stands. We cannot gag their delegation, so if they want to talk about Kashmir, they should do so with the understanding that our side shall not discuss anything to do with Kashmir, because under the umbrella of the UFA agreement, we are inviting them simply to talk about the most important subject, which is terrorism. And as far as the Hurriyat is concerned, it's an internal affair of India. We have already warned you, we have already conveyed to you that it will not be appropriate for Mr. Sartaj Aziz to meet Hurriyat. And if they accept the invitation and come here, they will not meet the Hurriyat. And we do not have to explain how we prevent it. It can be preventive detention, it can be any of the options the government has. And the internal problem, which is a fact we all know, which is the donkey's breakfast, which is the PDP, BJP government, which creates complications in this matter, is for the central government to overrule.
Mr. Dogra, sir, if you can hear me, it's rather interesting, and I want to take off from what Mr. Mukherjee was saying. Of course, there are various scenarios right now that are at play. But having said that, the latest information that we're getting in, of course, from that crisis meet is that Kashmir would be discussed by Pakistan. They would be broad-based talks and not terror-based talks, going back on the UFA pact. Do you reckon somewhere down the line that India was fairly naive to expect that Pakistan is going to stick to the UFA pact in the first place?
Well, I think, quite frankly, India has been naive all along over the last couple of months in terms of its flip-flops, in terms of not expecting that the end result is not having talks. End result is something else, and that end result is internationalizing Kashmir issue. So that is the script that Pakistan has been acting upon right through in a very methodical and systematic manner. We have only been fixated on talks at the NSA, DGMO and BSF level, and that's about it. What happens at the talks and what happens thereafter, we are not very sure of. And we are also fixated on producing excellent dossiers which will only help Pakistan to understand our security system better, so that the next time when they send terrorists, they are better prepared to obviate those traps. So the point really we should ask ourselves is, what are we going to discuss about Kashmir? Are we going to discuss about giving away some part of Kashmir, or are we going to discuss the command given by our parliament twice over in 70s and 2 years back, that the only issue that concerns the issue of Kashmir is getting the occupied portion back from Pakistan?
But like Mr. Dogra, Mr. Mukherjee said that it's best to say very clearly that you're not discussing Kashmir, that you're going to stick to the UFA pact. and still go ahead with the talks.
I agree entirely. But I am saying that since Nawaz Sharif has now dropped the parda and said that even he is as hardline as the Pakistan army is on the issue of talks with India, and he will insist on talking of Kashmir as now or 10 months later, we should follow the decision of the parliament rather than saying, okay, we will go ahead and discuss Kashmir. What Kashmir? Is it the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir that belongs to us that we are willing to discuss? So firstly, our priorities have to be right.
Okay.
Second, even if they raise Kashmir in the forthcoming meeting, we should just tell them that we are willing to discuss Kashmir only in terms of the terror attack in Udhampur, period.
Okay.
That is it.
Well, all right. What we're going to do is, gentlemen, we're going to cut across, get a quick ground report from Srinagar right now. We are joined by Shuja ul Haq, my colleague. Shuja, with what is looking imminent right now, and of course it's open to conjecture, we are looking at preventive detention of separatist leaders who were called in for talks with Sartaj Aziz. Could you give me what could be the possible ramifications of this preventive detention, especially in the valley, if India goes ahead with that?
Well, Preeti, as of now, none of the separatist leaders, except for Saeed Ali Shah Gilani, is under restrictions. Let's get that clear first. Yes, yesterday they were put under restrictions, but the restrictions have been removed. In fact, Mirwais Umar Farooq just finished his Friday sermon at Jama Masjid, Srinagar, where he said that it will be upsetting that if the talks were cancelled between the two sides, and he's made it very clear, saying that Hurriyat leaders or the Kashmiri leadership should be made a party to any discussion that is held between India and Pakistan. So that being the ground situation, I can tell you that while people are anxiously waiting as to what really would be the reaction that will come from Pakistan, but if the talks are called off, there will be a lot of upset voices from Jammu and Kashmir, not just from the separatist point of view, but also from the mainstream political parties like PDP and National Conference, who have time and again, in fact even today, said that dialogue between two countries should happen, and Kashmir should also be on the discussion table, because there are issues that are related to Kashmir between the two sides. So if at all the talks are called off, it will be upsetting for a lot of people in Jammu and Kashmir who have pinned their hopes on it. As of now, everybody is waiting and watching for that one announcement that is likely to happen from Pakistan, and then onwards probably we will get more reactions.
Well, what we are expecting, Shuja, and that's what Kasbar tells us, our colleague from Islamabad, we are hoping to get a reaction in the next hour, is what Kasbar is saying. Smita, the latest coming in, it seems India has decided that it will not call off talks. That talks will go on where India is concerned, and the onus lies with Pakistan. However, India will stick to its conditions.
Well, Preeti, the fact that India actually chose not to call off talks, even despite the Gurdaspur attacks, the Udhampur attacks, the ceasefire violations that has killed civilians, that seemed to be very, very baffling to domestic constituency here when we talk about India itself. That how come it is about the Hurriyat that has become so much more important, that Hurriyat has become the red line instead of terrorist attacks to, of course, ceasefire violations? That is a question that is being asked to the government here. But clearly, for now, since the government of India has already put so much at stake and gone ahead, despite all these provocations from Pakistan, they definitely not want to be seen as being the villain in this case. But remember, if Nawaz Sharif comes out and says, no, I'm sending Sartaj Aziz, he will not just, of course, raise the issue of Kashmir and the other gamut of bilateral issues. He will also meet with Hurriyat, and India allows that, then India will look very foolish, very silly, in which case it will be India which will have to blink eventually.
All right, Smita, stay with me. Let's cut across to former diplomat Mr. Mukherjee. Mr. Mukherjee, what would be the best reaction from India in those circumstances?
Well, as I said, they can say what they like. I mean, we can hardly prevent them from saying what they like. And if their official reaction is that yes, they're accepting the invitation, but they propose during the visit, before the talks, to meet the Hurriyat, in spite of the official démarche that we have already conveyed to them that it will not be appropriate, and also that they will discuss Kashmir. As I said, our reaction should be that as far as we are concerned, our invitation stands. Kashmir will not be discussed, you will not meet the Hurriyat, and leave it to them to say then, to respond whether they are coming or not. And on the Kashmir issue, we could even separately add that we are perfectly ready to discuss the Kashmir issue separately on another occasion with a two-point agenda. One, what is Pakistan proposing to do about totally stopping terrorism inflicted on India across the line of control and the international border, as well as bringing to justice those who have been, those against whom there is overwhelming evidence of terrorism, and two, what is the discussion on the only other real issue that should remain on the table, which is the return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir to India.
All right.
Make it very clear.
Right, gentlemen, thank you for joining.
And then if the talks are called off, so be it.
So be it. Put the onus on Pakistan. Not in India's interest to call off talks right now. We're going to keep coming back to our guests, Rajiv Dogra and Shivshankar Mukherjee. Appreciate you, gentlemen, for joining us.